therapy. It puts my anxious thoughts to sleep. Helps me focus my attention. Avoid the fear of imperfection. I know it's never too late to sit down and pen another verse. It's how I seem to calm myself down, eternally conversing. There must be millions of us out there who struggle with their words. But when I'm stuck inside my headspace, I'm in a lonely universe. But music is my therapy.
Hello again, my friends, and you are my friends, and welcome back to your Formula One fan show live on Monday. It's me, the Governor, HDR Martin. Welcome in. We are around 11 weeks from the start of a new Formula One campaign, but don't worry, the Formula One boys are going to be sticking around and bringing you all of the latest as we head into a new campaign. But this episode here today, we'll be looking back at the 2020 race campaign. As always, I'm joined by our F1 aficionado, Mr. Stephen Thompson. Stephen, how you well?
Hello. I'm well. Yourself?
I'm very well, thank you. Yes, it seems like yesterday, but also years ago that we last had a Formula One race.
Yeah, it's a strange feeling. It's good to be back doing this. It's really weird because the season went on so much later than it usually does, but it still feels ages ago, and I miss it. You know,
it does, but only 11 Mondays between now and we reviewing our first race. I'm very excited. It'll be my first proper campaign, and I'm really looking forward to picking up and sort of playing with this show. You know, because obviously with the town shows that I do, I'm already in that world. I'm already really in depth with that. Whereas this, I'm coming to it with brand new eyes, but a little bit of knowledge. And I'm really looking forward to it, and I can't wait to see what you and Neil bring. We've been obviously content create thinking over the last summer, and we thought we'd kick things off with a 2020 review and just pick a few things out. For those watching or listening currently, this show will be made available on all good podcast platforms. So if you are watching it and you need to jump off somewhere, don't worry, you can catch us later, or if you're watching it back at later date, you can search the F1 Fan Show Live and you will be able to take us with you to Tesco's or wherever you are able to go in these lockdown
only if it's essential shopping though.
Times. Yes. So sensible. I think it's time we brought in I should have played your intro, to be fair, but I didn't.
Disappointed.
So I'm going to change brands very quickly and bring in this man here.
Wake up to the wow. Wake up to the money, turn me right on. You look like you got dressed with no lights on. A Superman that spin like a cyclone. Fit check, spin like a cyclone. Wake up to the money, turn me right on.
Yeah, but we're crap. We're not going to dominate any team.
Mr. Neil Moles, Mr. Positivity himself. What we'll do is I'll have to get you. I'll have to try and clip up some sort of F1 comment you will make and put that at the end of it. So for the F1 show, we can have, you know, George Russell's bloody useless, mate. He ain't going nowhere. Or whatever you may say. But are you well, Mr. Positivity? Are you well?
Oh, I'm living the dream.
I could see you giggling away during that intro. You absolutely
That's
love
because I knew it was coming.
Yeah, well, there you go. I'm really tempted. Do you know what? Just to break it up, before we go into the wheel and go through the 2020 there. Through non-COVID times, I may get, you know, you may have to do a soccer AM, you know. Oh, yeah, strut to that. Who is the guy? Tim Lovejoy.
That's it. I just noticed the dabbing Santa in the top corner as well. I need to change that.
Yeah, well, it's all being go at the moment. Town have been signing players left and right. But as I alluded to there too, we have got the wheel. On the wheel is several options, several different meanings of the F1 2020 calendar. We'll spin that wheel. Whatever it lands on, we'll just unpack it. Things like best driver, worst driver, most
Sounds
underperforming.
good.
Yeah, things like that. Just give me your answers. I'll
Martin,
take it.
I do mean to ask you, how have you enjoyed the season that we're now about to talk about? Have you enjoyed it?
Yeah. It's been.
Because I remember originally you watched a race and messaged me saying, "Did I enjoy it?" And I said yes, and you said, "Well, I must have been watching it wrong."
Well, and I think as a new fan, you
That
probably
sticks
are.
with me.
You know, I do try and be a little bit respectful because I know what it's like as an NFL fan.
As a new fan, I can understand that though.
Yeah,
You know,
there's
there are
been a
some
few
races
this year where I'd
I
rather
think the
have put
race
pins
in
my eyes.
question, I think the race in question was one of these where you look beyond what's exactly happening on the screen. It's about the details behind the scenes.
Yes, absolutely. And there's been a few races where when you're an aficionado like you both are, it's sort of you're a pig in muck sort of thing. You know, you're loving it. It's so good. Whereas us new fans or casual fans, we're kind of reaching for the remote or, you know, looking at our phones, etc. But there's been some races that have been absolutely exhilarating. And we have got, I think that is on the wheels. Let's get to the wheel, because I think it is on the wheel, as in like best drive. There's the Steve Thompson baseline.
It's a groovy little one. It's groovy. I like it.
Oh, look at that. Look. Great way to kick things off. Driver of the year. Steve, who has been your
Lewis.
driver of the year?
No.
It's got to be, surely, man.
He's one of them.
Record.
Yeah, he's one of them in the best car. You know, for me, driver of the year, Sergio Perez. Easy. 4th place in the championship. He missed a couple of races through COVID. Didn't let that affect him at all. Every race he finished, he was in the points. The retirement at the end of the season wasn't his fault. He won his first race and he's been rewarded with the drive at Red Bull. So for me, it's Checo Perez. I mean, Hamilton's obviously right up there because it was a stormy season from him, but it was to be expected, maybe. Perez.
Can you really say
expected.
that though? Like, because if you're going to big up George Russell for the performance in the car, you can't then say Hamilton did okay, but it was more the car. Like, you can't put one driver down because of the car and then bring another driver up and not blame the car or contribute the car.
No. I mean, Hamilton, obviously, yeah, he's been aided by having clearly the best car on the field. But look, we've spoken about this before. You know, look how much he dominated Bottas, and look at the gulf between him and Bottas. George stepped in the car and was quicker than Bottas as well on race day, which doesn't say a lot for Bottas, really.
8 minutes.
But
It took 8 minutes.
Happy New Year.
8 minutes.
Some things never change. No, with Lewis, you know, I mean, he had a fantastic season because he was really consistent as well. He's had seasons in the past where he's made silly errors and that sort of thing. I can't think of anything this year apart from the pit exit start thing in Russia. But the team told him, you know, I think the only mistakes have been from the team, really. So he's up there on the drivers of the year, definitely. But
Yeah,
for me,
ask Russell on that
personally,
one.
Sergio. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, dodgy calls from Mercedes this year. So Lewis is up there, but for me, it's Perez.
Okay.
Definitely.
Obviously, 4th place, Perez. Neil, who's been your driver of the year?
Do we have young driver of the year in this?
We do.
Okay. Yeah, I was trying to think.
But they can be the same. They can be the same if that, you know, if best driver of the year can also be.
Do
best
we
young
could
driver
still
of the year.
consider Gasly as young driver because he's had a few seasons in there now? So does he still include in that? But
He's a young boy, isn't he? Still early 20s.
because he performed well for me.
Yeah, finished
but-
in the top 10.
Yep. Norris, he had a very, you know, at the very start of the season anyway, he performed really well. Ricciardo, you know, he had, if more for him, it was flashes in the pan really, but he got some good results going. But yeah, I have to agree
Daniel
with
Ricciardo.
Perez. That's who I just mentioned. But that was more of a flash in the pan. Some good results here and there. He had some interesting finishes as well.
So you've both gone for Sergio Perez, just to confirm that. You've both gone
Yep.
for Sergio. So a strong year for Sergio. Just to obviously finish off that driver of the year point in on Perez, and I don't know if he'll come up the rest of the night. He might do, I don't know. But in case he doesn't, what has he got to do next year to carry on that ascendancy?
Be within half a second of his teammate every race.
Okay.
They're going to need him to be fourth, aren't they? Because if it finishes, or if it starts like it finished this year, it's going to be Mercedes 1-2, Red Bull, ideally 3-4. They're going to say Perez you're going to need to be, like you say, Neil, within a few tenths really of Verstappen, and there to mop up the pieces. Actually, to be fair, that's a really good comment from James. Yeah, that Ferrari did not belong anywhere near where he was putting it. A couple of podiums, great qualifying performances as well. Outperformed Vettel. So, yeah, actually, good shout. I didn't think of it.
Did he make that car look really good, or did Vettel make it look really bad?
I think, I don't know, that's really tricky because that was clearly an awful car.
Because Vettel made it look awful.
Yeah, something in that car wasn't working for Vettel this year at all. I think this is sort of the start of Ferrari starting to build more around Leclerc. That car was built more, I think, for Leclerc than Seb, and they knew Seb was on the way out. But he was just so convincing every week, sticking that car where it shouldn't be. So, actually, yeah, really good contender for driver of the year, definitely.
And he may come up in the most underrated driver of the year, etc. Because it's a really good point, and I feel, yeah, absolutely. Good shout, James. Love it. Here we go. Best young driver of the year. Best young driver of the year.
Latifi.
Right. Neil, kick me off with Latifi.
No, we're really not.
You can't say something like that and then not expect me to jump on you.
Poor Nicholas. What if he's watching this?
Hello, if he is.
Doubt. If he is, he better switch off for 5 minutes.
No. Have we got one for... I really should have worked out what we were going to talk about.
Let me tell you what categories we've got. We've got worst driver of the year, best race of the year, most underrated driver of the year, worst driver of the year, most improved driver of the year, and needs to improve driver of the year. So this one is best young driver of the year.
Well, that's where, as I touched on on the last one, trying not to just follow suit with Perez, but Gasly, if we're including him, then definitely good performances, outperformed his teammate, who is vastly more experienced than he is.
Have you got a different name, Steve?
I agree with Gasly. He's up there. Whether you can count Leclerc as being a young driver still, I don't know, but he's up there. But for me, it's George, not just because I'm a Russell and a Williams fan, but because he got that car, similar to Leclerc and Ferrari, he got that car where it shouldn't be all season. He had the chance of points. He unfortunately threw it away. Yeah, it's a rookie error. He'll live and learn. He was consistent. And when he got a chance to drive the big boys, he didn't disappoint at all. So,
fair play. Can I just say Lando Norris? Because he's still a young man.
Yeah.
And he had another really solid year from a new point of view. And obviously, I don't know previous years. So when I say that, I have to sort of obviously safeguard myself. And
last season was his first, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And he was...
2019 was his first, yeah.
Yeah, he was okay that season. Inconsistent. There were tracks that basically he didn't seem to know and he was off the boil. But when he was at a track he was good at, he turned up. Whereas this season, just gone, he seemed more consistent. He was pretty much there every race.
Yeah, and I'm really quite excited to see where he goes next year as a young driver, young British driver. Just sort of see if we can just follow that up with another really good year. And it sounds to the car, I know, but look at maybe a top 7 overall finish. top 9 it was this year for the young lad from Bristol.
But for him, he basically, as we're talking about what Perez has to do, Norris has to keep close to Ricciardo. Whatever Ricciardo does, Norris has to keep him keen, basically, and that'll be a good season for him.
Okay, perfect. Right, on we go. I doubt this thing was copyright, Steve. If you fancy, just the next album.
Yeah.
Needs to improve driver of the year. Who needs to improve? Who had a really bad year this year that needs to improve, or they face their seat possibly?
3 drivers spring to mind. 3 for me. 1 has already lost his seat, so you can't really count him. That was Albon. The 2 that I'm really torn between. I mean, I forgot about Giovinazzi. That sort of proves the season he had. The 2 names that stick out in my mind is Bottas and Latifi. Both of them. Latifi more so. Really underwhelming. Really under the radar. Needs to be more with it next year.
Yeah, and I can't disagree with that. I mean, 3 drivers finished without any single points. And when you think about who those 3 drivers were, one only had 1 drive.
Who was that? He had Latifi?
You had Latifi, Aitken, and Fittipaldi.
Oh, right, okay. Okay, so Latifi did the full season, no points.
Yeah.
The other 2 did 2 races and 1 race. So you can't, but... I know Russell probably would have finished the season with no points anyway. Had he not had that drive, but at least he put in some good performances. Latifi was just there.
Dog.
If I had to say to you, give me a car that's close to the Williams, which car is the closest to the Williams in terms of just how bad it
probably the Haas.
The Haas. So Magnussen got a point. If Magnussen can get a point, you got to expect at some point over the course of a season to get at least 1.
Do you not think Alfa Romeo more than Haas?
No, I think Alpha were looking towards the start of the season. They were awful, but I think they did improve towards they progressed through. But Haas just never seemed to edge forward.
But Alfa Romeo makes it even worse, doesn't it? If you bring them into the conversation, because they got 4 points, the 2 drivers. So
I just think that Williams is better than Haas, and that's.
Well, if you're going by sort of Russell's performances, then that car was maybe the 2nd worst, possibly 3rd worst on the grid, because he was fighting with the Alfa Romeos and the Haas. But it was when they went down the qualifying result on a Sunday morning before the race, you had Russell sort of around the sort of 14th, 15th, 16th thing, and 20th place Latifi, week in, week out, unless someone had a penalty. He just always just last.
There's something fundamentally wrong, isn't it? And when you've got one driver that's towards the end of the season starting to really sort of... Steve was so excited more or less every week towards the end of the season because it was looking like Russell might finally break into those points. And then you've got one driver at the other end of the spectrum where there's no progression. And if anything, it's going the opposite direction. It's going the wrong way. That's a worry, isn't it? Because one person's really getting the best out of the car and one person's...
It's hard to say how much he improved over the season because he never really got in touch and distance, did he? So I'd say towards the end he did start to creep up, but I can't really tell whether that was because people dropped out or how pit stops fell and he gained some places up. But by the checkered flag, he was always, not in the points anyway. So
I know you've got to cut him some slack because it was his first season and he was in a dog of a car, but it's like he got to grips with the car at the last few races. He needed to be getting to grips with the car much earlier in the season. He had the whole preseason testing to do it.
But is that down to similar to Albon? Oh, your contract's in doubt. Oh, and suddenly pull a full couple of performances out to try and prove your worth.
Yeah, it's true. He's got that pay driver tag, and Williams are adamant he's not a pay driver, and he needs to put in the performances to prove it. Otherwise, he's just going to go down as another pay driver.
Following the takeover, he definitely does. I think it's safe to say he does now, doesn't he? Because they won't, if things are really trending in a different direction for Williams now, they won't take that too much longer, will they? They'll look to improve with an F2 driver potentially.
Yeah, I mean, it's tricky now because Latifi obviously brings a lot of money. But Williams, if they've now got all this investment from Doralton and they can attract new sponsors and things, after a while they're going to be thinking, okay, we can maybe afford to ship this guy out, get in someone with less money, but with a proven track record who could potentially do it for us. Whether they go to someone experienced, like, for example, I don't know, Hulkenberg maybe, just as an example. But they've opened the door for a lot of other drivers.
Yeah. Or you go for a driver, Neil, where, because you kind of think Latifi's reaching his ceiling, or you go for a driver that you've got, got a higher ceiling. He's got more room to grow into it and a better chance, if you like, being a better version of Russell.
I'm not really sure who out there is potentially better than Russell. It's hard to tell because just seeing one race in that Mercedes and how well he did, it would have been nice if he had got the second weekend following it as well. Give a bit of consistency. But yeah, Latifi's just miles behind him. In some ways, when I've seen Norris, I almost think he's marginally better than Russell, pace-wise, but whether he is or not, you never really know until they're all in equal machinery. You never know, do you?
That's it.
Okay. Just before we move on, is a driver like Jack Aitken maybe a better prospect than Latifi, if Latifi is to carry on?
I like him,
water?
but did he show enough?
I think he was on or around Latifi's pace for most of the weekend. And apart from that, the unlucky incident he had, which ironically cost Russell the win.
Yep.
Who knows what could have happened, but he's worth keeping an eye on, I think.
Yeah. So that's why I'm mentioning. I think obviously, and Williams obviously thinks so as well. If he's the first name they go to. Right, let's crack in. Oh, here we go. Best race of the year. What are you having? What was your favourite race of the year? What was the race that really grabbed
I liked
you?
Monza.
Really? Yeah? Why?
Because my man Sainz was in the hunt.
That's a fair point. Yeah, that's fine. Steve, what was your ideal? What was your the run race this year? Surely it's got to be the one where Russell is creeping close to that win, and then sadly Aitken decides.
No, that was up there, but I'm going to have to agree with Neil. Monza, because the top three, it was either going to be Gasly, Sainz, or Stroll that won that race. Never have they won a race before. You're going to get a first-time winner. It was an amazing finish as well with Sainz and Gasly. So Monza for sure.
Perfect. 2 Monzas. Big up the Monza. Right. Feel free to rip into whoever here, Steve.
Is it going to be a Haas driver?
Worst driver of the year. Who was absolutely woeful?
I'll say, is it going to be a Haas driver?
It's not a Haas driver.
Bottas.
I can't say he was the worst driver of the year. There's another section.
If you truly think the fastest car is the one he's in, and he's not getting anywhere near the guy who's winning it all, then you potentially can. There's room to say he was.
He was one of the most disappointing, but I think there's another segment for that. Worst driver of the year. That's quite tricky because none of them had like a really crap season. Latifi.
Are you really telling me that Magnussen and Grosjean don't deserve to get close to that trophy?
Yeah, I mean the Haas drivers were awful. Giovinazzi wasn't setting the world alight. Ocon didn't set the world alight. But I'm going to have to go with Latifi because there was no progression there at all through the year.
About Vettel as an honourable shout on this one. If we're thinking the other Ferrari car was where he was and underrated and whatnot, surely Vettel, and Neil said earlier, was it because that car was so good and Vettel was so poor? It's got to be an honorary shout, surely.
There's an honourable mention there because the car clearly had the potential to get that far up the grid. Why was Vettel constantly dropping out? So. But no, I'm going to have to go with Latifi because Vettel at least still showed signs of what he can do.
There is a little bit of the team pushed him out. Did he feel unwelcome as part of it? And was all that just in his head? And was he not given what he needed to get the car further? You've got to question as the fact that he was already out the door, how much help he was actually given and how much his mind was actually,
I mean, everyone who watches Formula One or has watched Formula One for a while know that Ferrari always favour one driver over the other. Schumacher, Barrichello, Alonso, Massa, and Vettel and Raikkonen, that sort of thing. They always have a number 2 and a number 1. And it does make you wonder how much.
Schumacher, Massa as well.
And Schumacher, Massa, yeah, because they had one season together. 2006.
Because wasn't it you had a chance where Massa was the main guy that had stayed in the team, and you thought this might be his chance not to be a number 2, and then Alonso comes in and is number 1.
There's Raikkonen first. Raikkonen, and Massa had a couple of years of sort of being on Raikkonen's level and having.
Because it was Massa that almost won the title when Hamilton did.
Yeah, 2008. Yeah. And then it seems like he never really recovered from that crash in 2009, and he was then just always put as a number 2 driver. So it makes you wonder how much support and advice and whatever that Ferrari were giving Seb, because they obviously, they know he's out the door. Their future is Charles Leclerc. So
who was your worst driver, Neil?
It's got to be Grosjean, hasn't it? Really?
Yeah.
Was he ever good all season?
No, not really.
No, not really.
Fair point.
2 points all year, obviously. Horror accident.
How many did Magnussen get?
But Magnussen got, drum roll please, 1.
Right, he was the worst then. I don't like him either.
So basically, Team Haas for you can just disappear because you're not a big fan of either of them.
No.
That's right. It's better this year than what Schumacher.
I'm not a giant fan of. Yeah, well, Stroll done okay, and at times, even though I don't like him.
The trouble is with Stroll, he was just so inconsistent. I mean, like I said, Perez, every time he finished a race, he was up in the points. And Stroll, considering he had a B-Tech Mercedes, apart from that pole position in Turkey and a couple of podiums, he never really set the world alight. It was always a sort of, he turned up and did the job.
It's those little times that stops him from being the worst, though, isn't it? He got away with.
He got pole.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Hulkenberg showed him up. For me.
He did, yeah.
You think laying on a beach one week and then in the car.
Yeah. Didn't even have a test, did he? As in, didn't even have a qualify. No. He just went straight.
We need you to drive, get in the car for qualifying, and away you go.
More absolutely. Practice. Right. Here we go. Let's do it. What we got? 3 left. Click the right screen. The most underrated driver of the year. Who went under the radar? Who had a good year, but no one, apart from this conversation here, is going to talk about this driver?
I would say, I'm going to say Verstappen. Because it may seem like a strange choice, but everyone's going to be talking about the Mercedes, Hamilton, amazing season, Bottas, disappointing season, whatever it may be. But Verstappen was always thereabouts, and he was always keeping this Bottas on his feet. So
it's difficult, isn't it? Because he, as you say, he was pretty much, if you think about it, he was pretty much on Hamilton's case whenever possible, and it was generally the car that let him down. It was only that wet race towards the end of the season where he got a little bit eager and lost it, and actually the weekend after he, as far as I was concerned, put it in the barrier, trying to get round the Leclerc and whoever it was. And that was 2 mistakes for me that he made, but other than that he was pretty flawless, really.
Yeah, and he won the last race. So, yeah, definitely Verstappen for me.
I think Leclerc, Ferrari for me, just to jump in.
Good
I know
choice. Yeah.
James mentioned him earlier, so technically somebody has already mentioned it, but I felt he was so much better than his running mate.
Teammate,
The car was. At the start of the
Not
year,
good.
we were sort of blasting it on the show in terms of how bad a Ferrari car it was, and to get as well as he did, as often as he did, no one's ever going to say, "Oh, wow." But I thought it was a good drive this year. So that's my shout. Sorry, Neil.
Yeah,
after you.
absolutely. Yeah.
No, it's a good shout because other than that, it's hard to really say anyone that was good that really went under the radar. Your Norris, your Gasly, and all of those. We know what they did. We've commented, but there weren't too many under the radar. But I'd say possibly, Leclerc is the biggest one.
I think there was more attention on Vettel not doing it than there was on Leclerc actually doing it. Leclerc was sticking it 4th, 5th on the grid, but they were more fussed on saying that Vettel's going to be 13th, 14th.
With what Ben said there, for me, Norris pretty much outperformed Sainz this season. It was only towards the end where Sainz almost pushed on a bit, but. So for me, Norris isn't under the radar. That was quite an obvious one for me. He's done good this season, and Russell constantly putting it into Q2. That's really on the forefront for that car as well. So that's why neither of those two for me came under the radar sort of thing.
How did you rate Ocon this year?
He's on the ones coming up in a second. He needs to improve because that wasn't good for him.
One or two left. Most improved driver. So who was really improved this year, or certainly beat your expectations of what you held of them from the following year or in general?
Norris for me is the big improvement. Norris, Perez, Russell, but for me, Norris is top of the pile.
Yeah, it's a fair point. Neil?
I think early on Sainz was he had some car issues that's what he puts as to blame, but Norris really did push on this season. He was a really good driver for McLaren. So other than that, like was mentioned, Perez performed really well. I think Ricciardo was a bit too inconsistent to completely get that. Obviously Gasly's had a phenomenal season, so
Gasly actually, to be fair, right up there as well. Ricciardo had some good performances, but
can I go for Norris's teammate? I think I think if you look, I wasn't a big fan in 2019, so I'm just literally looking at it from a statistical point of view. Points is the big one, right? And he got more points this year than the year before. So, and I don't know any background, so you may tell me he might have been ill, for example. I don't know.
The car he was in was better, which is a big help. And the Monza scenario, if he had got the win also rather than
but that's who
the second place. Yeah.
Just based on a statistical analysis of points.
With him though, I consider him. He's actually far more experienced than his age. He's actually been in the sport for quite a while, and he's done the rounds.
He's been in teams now as well, hasn't he? He's started off with Red Bull Junior at Toro Rosso. And
it's almost that he was binned off and no one wanted him, and then he turned up on McLaren's door and he's fitted in, and it's been rejuvenated his career really. So all credit to him and McLaren for allowing it.
And our last one this evening, biggest disappointment of the 2020 calendar.
There's only one driver for me.
Go on.
Valtteri Bottas.
What a surprise. Go on, why? Why?
Because he was never really on Hamilton's level, with the exception of a few weekends where he did surprise him, take pole position. One of the pole positions he got was because he had a driver in the other car who really didn't know the car very well, and even he got within a few tenths of him. He was then beaten by Russell when they were in the same car on race day. Obviously, apart from we had that puncture at the end, Russell would have won that race. And he just never seemed to have the pace or the consistency or the mental power to really get at Lewis and to really get in his head. And it's like Bottas had almost convinced himself that he wasn't going to do it this week and he'd try again next week. Then next week would come along and it would be the same thing. And before you know it,
He started the season so brightly, didn't he?
Yeah, he won the first race. Hamilton had a bit of a bad one. And then as soon as Hamilton came back in race 2, it just seemed to be a sort of steady downward slope, and he never seemed to get that mentality back. So it is almost basically like he was saying, well, I can't get you this week. I'll try again in Singapore, or well, not Singapore, but I'll try again next week.
Yeah.
And
I can't disagree with any of that. Bottas just wasn't good enough. But as Ben has said, Albon wasn't good enough, and his drivers, the cost of that. Stroll, I don't think for me to consider him anything other than a paid driver, and because his daddy's there, he's got to do far better.
Ocon as well, I think.
Ocon definitely. I think Mercedes will be looking at Russell, and I think Ocon's almost a bit of a Van Dorn for McLaren. Is pretty much is on the way out now. I think they're looking past him.
It's quite tricky, isn't it? Because Ocon is such a highly rated driver. He's an ex-Mercedes driver, of course. He started off with Racing Point, and he's still got close ties to that. But Russell has come in, and he's younger, he's quicker, he's more highly rated. He's going to get a look at that Mercedes seat when it becomes available over Ocon. How long are Renault going to take before they're competitive? I don't know. Or Alpine, as they are now.
Yeah. I suppose Ocon did fight Perez quite hard. And if Perez is considered as good as he is, then Ocon's not terrible. But Ricciardo showed him what was what, didn't he? So
yeah, I mean, the thing with Ocon, sorry, Mark, I know you're going to say something, but when he got replaced a couple of years ago at Racing Point, because they were getting Stroll in, everyone was saying, what are you doing? You can't replace Ocon. He's incredible. He's this amazing talent. And then he comes back in for this year, and no one's really raving about him. I'm sure people were watching his performances. He's not really done anything to say, this is what we've missed. This is why we need you in the sport.
But through when Schumacher was out for however many seasons, going away does not help a driver. That's why I'm not convinced Alonso's going to be amazing. Yes, as a great driver, he might prove me wrong that he can step straight back in, but breaks away from Formula One generally don't help.
No, I'm quite nervous because I'm quite an Alonso fan, but
I was, and then he ruined McLaren.
Right, there you go. Yeah, it didn't help. The thing is, he's burnt most of the teams he's been at. He's burnt all the bridges apart from Renault. They're always his fail-safe, but they're not going to be competitive for a couple of years. He's 39 years old now, and he's been away from the sport for a couple of seasons. He's probably going to get left in the dust.
And I'm sure we'll cover him in our 2021 review on another Monday. But to keep it on 2020, I want to know from you both what happened to Kimi Räikkönen this year.
A mixture of a poor car, and I think she's getting older.
I can't say he's lost the desire. I can't say he's particularly, gone downhill. But Giovinazzi towards the end of the season started to get some better finishes than him. So even though we love the bloke, it could be nearing the time where he does need to move to the side, but
one of his
he will
worst
be
points
missed.
Return It has to be said.
That car was awful though, with that Ferrari engine. All of the Ferrari engine cars basically had a horrific season.
Which is what makes Charles Leclerc's drive so much more impressive, really.
Absolutely. Kimi was one of those drivers that you either love or you hate Kimi. I love him. But he really did go
I
under the
hate his
radar.
interviews.
Oh, his interviews are so dull, but I love him for it. But he seems to really go under the radar this year. And it's Kimi Räikkönen's still in the sport. Yeah, because he was always down there, fighting the other Alpha, the Williams, the Haas, and Vettel, which is quite good to see, to be honest, seeing Vettel and Räikkönen fighting it out. But yeah, disappointing season from Kimi. So 2021 needs to be a good one because he's 40 years old now. I think it'll be his last season.
Yeah.
Well, there we go.
Thing is,
right.
yeah.
Go on, finish the point. No, finish it off.
Alfa Romeo, they do like him, so it just depends, how much that can keep him in the seat, really.
Definitely.
And then we'll see. Right, so we are back on the 25th, next Monday. Same time, same place. I'm sure Steve will encourage you all to get a beverage. Is there anything we need to know before we conclude today's roundup?
No, I think we're all good.
Perfect.
Just remember, keep showing the love for George. He'll be in that Mercedes seat before you know it.
Absolutely. And we've got a whole host of content coming up between now and the start of the year. Obviously, a 2021 race, 2021 season review preview will be happening. The unveilings, deliveries, and obviously all the news as it comes will break to you. But for myself, for Steve, and I'm sure Neil from a premium hotel, with love, with care, we'll see you all next Monday.